Welcome back to Mark Albit's Vlog, everyone. Thanks for joining in today. I can't help but share a little story with me. It's a little early on here in the morning, so you can see it's a little bit dark, but I just got off watching a video. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a video or a channel called Motivation Hub, and I came across this video, and it was Arnold Schwarzenegger talking about his motivation, how about he grew up, a storyline about his parents telling him he was going to work in a factory. He was going to be a farmer. He couldn't be a star. He saw the big shining lights of the United States and he wanted to become part of that. He wanted to see and do what a lot of Americans and movies are showing. And, he wanted to live that lifestyle. He saw a famous bodybuilder and said, hey, I'm going to do that. And then he spent his good part of his life building and developing the physique to build and keep crunching on, just to have people around him telling you can't, you shouldn't do that. You can't do that. You won't do that. And then he decided he wanted to get into acting. And again, he had people, naysayers, telling him that you can't do that. You shouldn't be doing that. Do something responsible. Go get a job at the factory. Acting is ridiculous. Bodybuilding is ridiculous. So this whole motivational video I saw was very inspiring to me because I kind of lived, now don't get me wrong, I certainly am not following in his footsteps. Arnold Schwarzenegger has done something that very few people can do, and that's literally carved a path in life and really forged ahead and made it all happen. But I do find his video very motivating, and if you ever get a chance to watch that video on YouTube, go to Motivational Hub and search up Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I just find it's really like a pump me up kind of a video because I've kind of lived a very similar life in some ways. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not an actor and I've never been in politics. I don't really want to get into politics. But what I have experienced is lots of people in my life telling me I can't, I shouldn't, and it's not the way to be, and it's just not the way to do it. And unfortunately, what I, growing up, hit my early 20s, and I started looking for a 911, a Porsche. I knew right away, early on in life, that I loved cars, and cars were always my motivation. They were always those things that motivated me to work harder, dig down, save those pennies, whether it was, selling old things that I didn't need, whether it was working an extra job, whether it was flipping, cars or parts and pieces and try to find the cash and the finances and the way to get that car in my possession. And I did that. My first Porsche, the 911, I bought an SC, and it was strictly from a place of motivation. I wasn't making a lot of money, but I always found ways to motivate myself to dig down, find ways to make it happen. Meantime, while I was motivating myself and I was getting jacked to buy my first car, I had people around me telling it's irresponsible. I know my dad, God rest his soul, I know he's not with us any longer, and that's clearly a sad day for me when that happened back in a couple years back. The reality is he comes from a generation where, as a farmer, it was all about, getting that dirt under the fingernails, working hard physically, and that was how you would measure yourself, was finding ways to just dig down, elbow grease, and that was what it took. And then everything else would work out in the end. And today's a different time. Today's a different place. And he had constantly tried to tell me that wasn't the right choice. I should do something more responsible, do something, get a better job, buy a better vehicle that wasn't so irresponsible. Buying an older 911 wasn't the most responsible play. But I just knew I had to have that car. And the motivation, the drive in me said, I've got to have that. And so I had my dad telling me no. I had people around me saying, hey, why don't you just get a new this or a new that? Maybe, a new Honda or a new Toyota or a new Mazda. Hey, great cars, you can get a new car. But I didn't want a new car. I was motivated. And so all around me, I had these naysayers saying, don't do it. Just don't do it. It's pointless. It's irresponsible. It's a waste of money. In the meantime, my dad's telling me I should get myself a Dodge truck or a pickup truck. It's more responsible. I can use it all the time. But I didn't want to follow that path. I for me, always had, I call it a sickness, call it what you will, but still to this day, and I'm an old, crusty, my kids now refer to me as a boomer, and I'm not a boomer. I'm not from that generation. I'm not a baby boomer generation. I am a Gen Xer, but, I'm constantly, hounded even through life. That's a pointless car. Why are you wasting your time and your effort? So, I bought the 911. I enjoyed it to its end. And the beauty was I sold it a few years later, and I was only motivated to sell it because I was motivated even further to buy the next car, because one day I went down, took a trip to California with my wife at the time. We went down there, Santa Barbara. If any of you guys are from down in those parts, you'll know. So that's Southern California, just north of Los Angeles area, a couple hours north. And I'd come across an ad for a 930 turbo, and I'm like, I didn't even have the money. It was almost like a pipe dream at the time. But what I did was, I was searching for this 930 because I had looked the way they looked, the fat whale tail and the looks and the style of them. And I knew, coming from a 911 SC with 185 horsepower, stepping into a 300 horsepower 911 turbo just meant so much sense for me. I was motivated. So then I find this car. I found this ad, and this car was in Santa Barbara. So me and the girlfriend, or wife at the time, girlfriend, we made our way to Southern California on vacation, and we did a little detour, stopped in Santa Barbara, and I came across this Porsche 930. And if we're being honest, I met up with the seller. And the guy took me out for a ride. And we went out, we basically kind of scoot through some back roads and finds a bit of a freeway on-ramp, if you will. And so the owner of the car decides, here, check this out. He gets the car warmed up. He's scooting through the neighborhood, just kind of casual, warming the car up. We hit the on-ramp, and all of a sudden, you ready? Yeah, let's do this. He puts his foot into it, and at that point, I started hearing the turbo spool. You hear the whistling of the turbos. Next thing you know, the back end's getting loose. It's shagging it down the road. And I just remember this aggressive series of noises from turbos, blow-off valves, air-cooled engine, the 930 or the Porsche 911 turbos back in those days. They were air-cooled. They made extra valve train noise. They were noisy, but they were good. And so the combination of air-cooled engine, turbo noises, blow-off valves, the aggressive shifting, and the way the car was all over the place, immediately I said I needed to get one of those. I needed to get myself a 911 turbo. So immediately I became very motivated by the fact that this 911 turbo was in fact the car I needed to get. And honestly, it was just, I knew right away that was a car for me. So immediately my motivation scale went through the roof. And then I knew it's like a sickness. I get in, I drive a 930, I buy one, because soon after that drive, I couldn't sell my car. I came back home, I decided to try to sell my car. Didn't sell very quickly. Took actually a couple more years. By that time, that other 930 came and went, and I found myself eventually having to start to go on the prowl for another 930, in which case I did. I stumbled across a few. I'd spent a few years looking for the right car, came across one in Calgary, so it's a city south of us, and the owner was oil and gas industry, had this car. Didn't realize that at the time. It was a super clean Canadian car, but I didn't realize at the time, after the fact, he raced the car and he drove it hard and he did all the mods to it. And so I realized after buying the car, took it in for an inspection, owned it for a couple of years and realized it was leaking and all kinds of issues with it. So I took it in, had it rebuilt, spent 25 grand getting it all rebuilt. And then I had the car of my dreams, and quite frankly, there was nothing like it. Then time goes on, and I realized, the next best thing. So I had the 930 for probably about 7 years, and then I got into the Lamborghini. And just the sickness kept going on and on and on. But every time I took that step, I was more and more motivated. I've had people on the channel ask me, how did you get to the place where you're affording a Lamborghini and an F-Type And honestly, it's just through a matter of series of steps and incremental changes over the years. It came from a place where, motivation drove me. I worked really hard at my job. I actually owned business for a while, so I can share that piece in there, and I'll get into more detail. But because I was so motivated, I found the means. And it was all above board, but I owned business. I worked a couple of jobs for a while. Like I said, taking those steps, those incremental steps. But the whole time, you've got the pressures of people telling you that's not responsible. You shouldn't do that. That's a waste of time, waste of money. And honestly, it was nothing but uphill battles all the way. But the motivation to keep moving on and on and on is what drove me to get to the next car. So here we are, get into the F-Type, or the Lambo first. Then I had the Lambo. Then I bought the F-Type because I'd seen that car and I just knew I had to have it too, because I'd seen that on Top Gear, and the motivation is what kept driving me. So I just have to say to folks that are finding it difficult to make that next step, just know that incremental steps is what actually helped me get there. It's not one big step. I didn't necessarily wake up one day and say, I want a $400,000 car. I actually started with a $20,000 car. Then I moved into a $40,000 car. Then I moved into a $100,000 car. And then it just keeps moving up and up and up. And it was the motivation and the drive all along that kept me going, looking for the next step, the next step, the next step. Now here I find myself in a place where the Lambo's gone. The F-Type's still here. I love the F-Type. But I'm ready to make that next step. Now again, I have naysayers around me saying, well, it's kind of pointless. Well, maybe you should invest that money. Well, maybe, be honest, it's a sickness, and I'm not going to lie, it is what it is. But we're making that next step because of the motivation is driving me, and I'm finding the means through hard work, motivation, business, and all kinds of other means to keep driving forward and making sure that that line of sight is still there, that I have those opportunities, and those opportunities are coming because of the drive. Now remember, like they say, baby steps. Baby steps is, if you're wondering how you can make this happen, if you're looking at that $100,000 car, maybe think of it in 2 bite-sized pieces. Maybe if you don't have the funds or the means, that's fine, because we have to work to that. Unless you're born with a silver spoon or you have an immense amount of money or cash flow, what I found I had to do is just find ways to work through that step by step. So if you want a $100,000 car, maybe step into that $40,000 or $50,000 car. Take your loan, drive it, own it for a few years. Make the right choice. Don't get yourself in a corner where you have the wrong car that will never sell and it depreciates like a rock. But the F-Type is fine. It already seen most of its depreciation. And by the way, buying a new one will see some depreciation, but it's the right car. And if you're buying it for passion, then you buy it for I have one, I love it. But make sure that you're doing the right things to get yourself set up for that next transaction. Remember, baby steps. Maybe it's a matter of saving. Maybe it's a matter of budgeting, putting money aside. Maybe you need a side hustle. Whatever that is, find that means and follow through. But the thing is, I can't help but emphasize enough, the way I kept forging on ahead, kept driving forward, is said, piss on the naysayers, because I've had my share and then some to choke on a horse. As you all know, I do YouTube, and, a friend of mine got me into this a few years back, and he kind of explained to me how this all works. I asked a ton of questions. We worked through a lot of problems. We started from ground zero. But the meantime, I had a whole lot of people saying, that's hilarious. What are you doing, man? Like, come on, that's for kids. Come on. And I'm thinking to myself, well, maybe. But you know what? I'm never too old. I was pretty much ready to try anything. You're never too old. The way I see this, there's plenty of time to rest when you're dead. I look at old timers like Scotty, right? We all know Scotty Too Hottie from the Tube. That guy's clearly got 10 years on me. He's still going hard, 5 days, 7 days a week times 2. I mean, you stop when it's time to stop. And for me, like I said, I'm not a fan of, letting the naysayers get me down, because I've had people say, hey, it's YouTube or else. And honestly, you do it, you do you. And the naysayers, they can go pound sand. And honestly, you find your goal, you work towards your goal, you do those things, whether it's, like I said, whether it's through savings, side hustle, side job, or maybe it's just moving up smaller incremental changes and flipping cars. I don't know what the deal is. Everybody's got their own thing. But again, the thing I can't emphasize enough, the motivation to keep pushing on. And all I'm going to leave you with this, everybody, is find your niche, find your thing, find that hustle, find whatever keeps you ticking. And I just want to leave you on this note. If you want to check out a video that really says it the best. I'm not here preparing for this video. I'm not standing in front of in an auditorium putting on the big speech. I'm not doing an motivation hub, but I will say, check out that motivation hub video. Arnold Schwarzenegger says it best. And while I don't have the things he does, we all do it in our own micro levels, and his message spoke volumes to me. Just listen to the message, and it'll connect with you in your own way. I just can't help but share that with you guys. So anyway, I just wanted to touch on this. If you're wondering how to get it done, that's how to get it done. And everybody does it in their own way. Please do it above board, but you know what? At the end of the day, do it in your own way. Watch that video. It'll resonate with you, I guarantee you. If you're looking for ways to do that next best thing, you're definitely going to want to check it out. So thanks, everybody. I just wanted to have that quick chat with you today. And again, at the end of the day, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you want to find a channel that literally lives the dream and lives the passion, and really, honestly, it is about the lifestyle. Because remember, life is too short to drive boring cars, and that's why we're here. That's what we're doing. I'm not selling you guys on how to pick the best chess moves. That's not what this channel's about. I'm not telling you how to knitting 101. What I am telling you about is, you know what? Live your best life. Live the car dream. And you know what? The heck with the naysayers. So thanks again, everyone. Be sure to subscribe, and we'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.